Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Personalization and Personas, Engaging Every Audience on Campus with the University of Notre Dame. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend 15 to 20 minutes with us talking about personalization and personas, and then really diving into what the University of Notre Dame is doing to keep evolving its mobile presence to ensure that it provides the best return on investment with their mobile app. Today, we'll be learning about how the University of Notre Dame reaches everyone on campus with a unified mobile campus app with separate personas for faculty and staff, guests, grad students, alumni, and more. My name is Heather Hamill, and I'm the Senior Marketing Manager at Moto Labs. Joining me today is Marty Klubeck, Product Manager for the Notre Dame mobile app at the University of Notre Dame. Before we get started, I wanted to cover a few logistical items so that this webinar can run very smoothly. As the broadcast mentioned to everyone on the phone, everyone is on listen-only mode today. With that said, if you go to the webinar bar on the right-hand side of your screen, there's an area that says questions. If you hit that caret, a drop-down will come about where you can type in your questions. At the end of the webinar, we'll have some time for questions, and if we don't manage to get to every one of your questions, we'll be sure to follow up after the webinar and contact you directly. We'll be recording this webinar, and the slides will be sent out after the presentation, so anybody who has to drop off early or anyone who has colleagues that registered who didn't end up being able to make it today will receive the recording directly to your email, and you'll be able to share it out as well. With that said, I wanted to kick it off and hand it back to Marty, who's going to start talking to us today about how the University of Notre Dame is using personalization and personas to reach their campus audience.
Hello, thank you, Heather. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Since you can't answer, we won't know for sure. So I wanted to start by introducing myself. I am the product manager for the ND mobile app at the University of Notre Dame. And at the university, we talk about product management. It's a kind of a new role. And so I want to explain to you how we use that. So we talk about product management in three different ways. We use three different analogies. One is a coach, one is a restaurant manager, and one is a concierge. And I'm going to use the concierge just because it's the one I kind of like the most, but any one of them works fine. And when we actually do presentations, we try to use all three. So when you think of a concierge at a hotel, they help customers find the right answers for things. They also, they take responsibility for the entire experience, and they serve as the face of that hotel, and in our case, the face of the product. And finally, one of the things that concierge does is give feedback to leadership on what they hear and what people's questions may be and different problems they may be having. So I have multiple products, but the ND mobile app, our version of the Krogo app, is one of my products. And when I first took over that product, I had questions of my own, and I had things I didn't understand, and I didn't understand how that experience would work, and I actually didn't even have that app on my phone. And the reason I didn't have it on my phone is the same reason I found out other people didn't have it on their phone, specifically faculty and staff didn't, was because they didn't think there was a home for them. When we looked at the app the first time and I saw what was on it, we saw that we had only guest students, get my slides to work right, guest students and alumni and friends. And that's all there was on our app as far as selecting a persona. And the argument was, oh, well, feel free to put yourself in as a student, put yourself in as a friend. That's always good, right? Being a friend of the university, or be a guest. But most of us looked at it as, I'm not a student, I'm not alumni, so alumni and friends definitely go together. And I get the feeling that that's all about alumni. And if I looked at the screens, it would be. And I'm not really a guest because I work here and I'm either faculty and staff. And so I didn't feel like I had a sense of belonging. And so we wanted to make sure that everyone had a sense of belonging and felt there was a reason to download the app. So we were missing a large part of our possible population. I know some universities use it primarily just to communicate with students, but we find that it's great to communicate with everyone. And we talk about Notre Dame as being a family and being part of the Notre Dame family. And even guests can be part of that Notre Dame family. So we definitely didn't want to feel like we were leaving off a big part of our family, our faculty and staff. And so we added that persona. That was just a simple way to make us feel and make the faculty and staff feel part of that family again, and to have a reason for them to look at the app and say, yep, I belong here, I'm gonna download it. Now, between you and me, I could have had the exact same functionality, the exact same modules, the exact same screens for faculty and staff as I did for guests. But I couldn't get them to download the app because they didn't have a sense of belonging. So it's just adding the persona can increase and give me more people using the app. And the people I want to reach those people also. We also found that grad students had that same feeling of not belonging. They weren't any of the other categories. And although they are technically students, being grad students, being adults, being working on their advanced degrees, they definitely did not feel like they were an undergraduate student. They weren't living in the dorms. They weren't part of the same intramural programs. There's a grad faculty staff that you do for intramural programs here. So the graduate student felt like they didn't belong. And so they weren't downloading the app. So again, creating that persona gives us that. And of course, it gives us other things, like being able to do push notifications and communications directly to those personas. And of course, designing those personas in a way that meets that person's needs specifically. So one of the things we do is customizing I got to explain this though. One of the things that I found that I ran into was I was single threaded. When I took over as the product manager, I took over the whole app, and that was content, that was development, that was maintaining and everything. And that was just more than I think any one person should be handling. And so one of the things I did was I said, you know what, we need to create an advisory council and to help us lead this and know what's what and who's doing what. And one of the first places I could go to was alumni. And alumni had this persona in the app, very rigorous. It was there, it was healthy, it was all set up. And I said, great, so we have alumni. How about I get with the person that owns alumni, and can we say to them, can they be the owner? And we did. So we found someone alumni, they're paying for their pages anyway, and said, you get to decide what your app should look like or what your interface with the app should look like. At the same time, we said, well, now we also have graduate student, we added that persona. You know what, you could decide what you would look like. And you notice they have totally different landing pages. And that's, of course, one of the beauties of Kurogo and Moto Labs, that I can do this. I can have the landing pages look totally different, but it's based on what they want. And so if the alumni was happy with this view, which by the way, they're not, they like the graduate student kind of view. I have a younger person in charge of it over there, and their view is, I don't want to see the icons, I want to see something more group like you see for the grad students. And so we will probably be editing that and changing that, but actually they'll be editing and changing that, which is great because I couldn't do it all on my own. I didn't feel like I could, and I didn't feel like I should. And because I have personas, I can go out and find the people that own those personas. So again, alumni is owned by the alumni office, grad student is owned by the graduate school. And when I look at other places around the university, they're owned by whoever they own it. So the undergraduate is owned by our student affairs, as an example. And I actually have a student that works with student affairs. It's in our student government, our IT director within the student government. So it's a student position each year. They team with student affairs to own the student persona. The only persona that's kind of left without a direct owner would be guests. And so I'm right now owning that, but I'm moving that over to our public affairs to own that one. Faculty and staff is owned jointly between our provost's office and our executive vice president, the administrative side, and the HR area. So that covers all of them, and I have different owners that I can go to. They get to decide the look and feel, what items are they offering. So you'll see some things in alumni that are not in grad student. You'll see things in undergraduate students that are not in the others. And so they get to make those decisions. as well as deciding what push notifications will go to each one of those personas. So recently we had game day. It's a great thing, right? We added game day. You see it over here on the alumni list. And that's for our because we're a big football school, we love football. And so we have this whole module that's all designed around getting you a game day experience. Well, where do we put that? Do we put that on every one of those? Does it go on the guest students, faculty, staff, and alumni and friends and graduate student? And who should decide if it goes on those different personas? Well, our persona owners get to make that decision also. So what is shown within their persona, how it's shown, what does it look like, how is it navigated, and they get to decide of any push notifications. So again, during game day, we have a brand new clear bag policy. And our game day people that own that said, I want to send out a push notification to everybody coming to the game because they're gonna, make sure that they know about the clear bag policy. So I have a form, they fill out the form, that form automatically goes to the persona owners, and the persona owners can modify that push notification for their persona. They can tweak it, they can say no, they can say yes, and so they have total control over what those push notifications look like, sound like when they go out to each one of those personas and each one of those groups of audience. And they have that responsibility, that power, and they help me a lot. So I like to say that I'm moving from being single-threaded to becoming a tapestry of color. So along with that, let's talk about some of the things that I've been doing besides locked in personas like you saw the 5 I have, or 6 I have. I am also, look, we also use temporary personas. So our welcome weekend used to be done in a fully different third-party stand-up app, take it down, for 1 weekend a year. And it's for welcome weekend for our undergraduates. And so instead, we stood up a persona. And the reason, again, I like the persona versus doing it in any other way, it's just a module as an example, is that we could do a push notification. So we're a small school compared to a lot of schools. And so we only have about 2,000 students per class group per freshman year. So how many do I really need to be able to get into the welcome weekend? And when I send a push notification, I don't want that to go to every undergraduate student. I don't want it to go to juniors and seniors and sophomores. Definitely not grad students. I want to go to only the ones that are showing up for the welcome weekend. So we actually stand up our own persona just for new student orientation. And this year we put it totally inside the welcome, inside the Mobile Labs app, our ND mobile app, and it worked great. We're able to do push notifications, banner notifications to get statistics on people inside the persona, know where they are. We can make changes. It's great. And that persona lived for 2 weeks, or because we did it before they got here. We want to make sure that they can access it and know about things that are going to happen. Of course, it was big during the weekend that they showed up. And then shortly after they finished the welcome weekend, we pushed anyone that was in that inside that persona automatically got pushed to the undergraduate student persona. So that worked out really well. Another one that we like is we have a leadership and a reunion. So we have a leadership conference for our alumni, and that leadership conference is based around, we have alumni clubs, and then we also, and then actually ND clubs and not only alumni, anyone can be in that club, but we have ND clubs and we have reunion. So we have 2 other times that we have people coming on campus and needing an experience and wanting to find, I want to make sure I know who you are and what you're doing here. And so some of these people are alumni for the leadership conference, some aren't. For reunion, pretty much all of those people are alumni. But we want to be able to give them a personalized experience within the app. And again, so important that I can do all those push notifications to them, communications are clearer, and I have my statistics based on the apps. I know where they are. And so it just makes it so much easier. And these can be stood up and again, taken down. So when they leave this one, leadership conference or reunion, when that time is up for that event, which is both of them about a week long, we push them over to alumni and friends, which is where we're assuming most of them came from. And if they didn't come from there, what a great introduction to our app. They get to be here for this conference, or they get to be here for a reunion. They download the app, they understand, they see everything they wanted to, and the next time they open up that app, it's not going to just still show them reunion a week after they finish with the reunion or back home. It's going to say, oh, you're an alumni and friends now, and that's where it's going to bring you up, and you're going to go, wow, what's this stuff? Oh, more stuff I can use. And so hopefully it'll keep them in the app if they weren't using it to begin with. And the last one I mentioned already, I showed you as a new persona, but it is a new one and it's recent. So I want to show you here also that they kind of designed their own orientation. So our grad students have their own orientation that goes on each year. And so they have their own sub-persona within the graduate school. Besides the graduate persona, they also had a graduate orientation persona. And one of the fun things in that was they did a scavenger hunt even within it. And so it's just, they combined it with all the tools, and it was really fun, and I had a good time. Those are some of the temporary personas I've stood up and that we bring up every year and take down. And I can see that, and you might be able to see other opportunities for the same type of thing in your university or college. All right, we still have new frontiers that I want to get to with even more use of personas and personalization. And one of those is a kind of a look at, I want to know if you're on campus or, you know, maybe you're off campus. And I want to be able to show it differently, show you different things, because if you're actually physically here on campus, you might want to know things like what time is the dining hall open, or what time are these different eateries on campus open. And I might want to order food ahead at those eateries. But if I'm sitting in California and just looking at my Indeed mobile app because I want to know what's going on in Notre Dame, I don't need to know anything about the eateries or anything else like that. So I need a different, I want to have a different persona for when you're on and when you're off campus. And there's different ways to do that. I know with knowing where you are and where you're not, but I'm thinking, you know, it'd be easier just to have an on or off decision based on each one. So if I'm an alumni, I could say, I'm going to remove some things from alumni if I'm on campus versus where I'm off. And this is where you also get to decide which one comes first. So on the, if you're watching on the off, I'm going to start deleting some of these because I'm thinking, you know, you don't need it. You're not here. So you don't need to be able to do emergency notifications on campus. You don't need to know about the map on campus. You don't need to know when the shuttle is running on campus. So of course we would restructure this, right? So that they're all smooth and they look good and they're all top, you know, it's not big space, but I'm just giving you a concept that the on-campus might have other things than the off-campus does, and it could just be a subset of what you have from one to the other, and that's fine. That works for me. It doesn't have to be a whole new view of new things. It might just be, I'm gonna limit it so you don't have to be bothered with stuff that you don't need. And so I'm looking for doing that for alumni because they do visit. They visit for reunion, they visit for leadership conference, they visit for football games, and sometimes they just visit. And so when they're on campus, I want them to be able to have a different experience. And what will happen is that very first icon is this is my plan. I've been playing with it and I have a prototype, but the very first icon, instead of being alumni directory in this case, the very first icon when you're off campus will say on campus. And if you click on it, it would take you to that persona. And once you're on the on-campus persona as an alumni, and you have your limited or more expansive view, it doesn't matter, the first icon will say off campus. And so when I leave campus to go back home, I can, whenever I remember, I can click that off campus and I'll get my more pristine view and the less, I don't have things I don't need anymore. I also see that working with other personas that we can do that with, mostly guest right now. So I imagine guests can be on and off campus and alumni can be on and off campus. Students, usually they're on campus, and when they're off over the summer, they're checking very few things. We could do it with them also. I just haven't thought that far that I'm going to do that yet. So that's another type of persona. So we have the temporary personas. We have I want to do an on and versus off campus persona. We have our major personas that we have for everyone. And then we have other modules, of course, like everyone else does. And for me, it's a part of this with the personas help me understand that I needed to become that tapestry of color I told you about. So I have an advisory council that owns it. So not only do they own the personas, but they also own things like I told you, game day. So this is totally owned by the game day department. They're responsible for updating, keeping the content, but also the design and everything else that goes into it. Sustainability would be another example that we have. I'm looking at others as far as that there's other opportunities to have other people own their own modules, not just personas. And in all of these cases, I'm going out and I'm finding, because we are both centralized and decentralized IT support. We have a little bit of both. And so I'm out finding IT support for each one of these module owners, and I'm finding the IT support for the persona owners, and I'm giving them the ability to deploy and do the background work I do in Modal Labs. So if someone makes a change to their data source or to a module and they need it deployed, especially short notice, they're not relying on one person, the single threaded one, but they can go to that tapestry and find the right IT person. And in fact, it will be their IT person that they usually go to for IT help. That person will not only be able to help them with the design elements, because I'll be teaching them on how to be better at managing within the Modal Labs infrastructure, but they can also do the deploys for them, and they don't have to rely on me being there all the time to do that, or reaching me at home or something at night. They can bother somebody else every once in a while. So I still believe there's more frontiers for these personas to look at, and I'm working with other people to become owners of these frontiers and to grab them and do them. And so the first thing that comes to mind from us was parents. I wanted to have a persona specifically for parents, because again, they don't feel like they belong in the Indie Mobile Lab. They can go into friends, and if they're alumni, they can go under alumni, but if they're not an alum and their child is here at school, they could go to students, but again, a lot of that stuff they don't need to see. So I want to have a persona for parents, and I'm working on finding my sponsor / owner for that. And along with parents, I of course can expand that to be parents off campus and on campus, because when they come to visit, I want to be able to give them that opportunity to have the on-campus experience, and when they're off campus, they can see other things. You think, well, what kind of things for that? I find, just as a side note, that alumni and parents love having webcam on campus, even though it's like one of those really from far distance, but they can see people walking around campus, they can see the students living on campus and just being there, and it makes them feel like, oh, I'm there, I get to feel like I'm on campus, and it gives them a warm and fuzzy, it makes them feel good. So, temporary personas, new personas in ways that we don't always think of. I know we have my persona, and it's awesome. The only reason that we aren't, in my opinion, why I haven't embraced in my persona yet for giving this personalized experience is because it requires a login. And then besides the fact that I have to get my identity management folk to make sure we're passing in the information I need to be able to tell if you're a student or to tell if you're faculty or staff, and on and on. Also, we have the issue here that we have some, and I'm sure you do, we have students that are student workers also. So do they, how are they showing up in my identity management? They'll probably show up as student because that's their primary function. But if they want to look at staff, I've already pushed them into this environment that they might not want to see. On and off campus, I might be able to do things to say, oh, I can tell that you're close to campus or on campus, especially if I have a fence and geofencing going on, but I don't have that right now. So again, the easiest thing is to allow them to self-identify, and they can pick students, they can pick parents, they can pick whatever they want, so they can see what other people get to see. But the idea is that we can use personas to give them a personalized experience. And probably the most important part is they have a feeling of belonging, so they want to download the app, and they know that they have a place in the app. So, opening it up for whatever questions you might have. Again, this is my contact information, so in case you need it at any point, it'll be up there for a while we take any questions you may have about what we're doing with personas and why we're doing it the way we're doing it.
Hi, Marty, this is Heather again. So I'm going to be feeding you questions that are coming up in the chat box. So everybody on the line, feel free to, again, navigate to the right-hand corner of your screen where you'll see a caret called questions. and put any questions that you have for Marty in there. The first question that we have coming in is around the idea of overlapping personas. So how do you manage the data that might overlap on several personas? For example, if information for undergrads might also be featured in information that's in one of your on or off campus personas, how do you deal with that without creating repetitive experiences?
Thank you. So we don't really think of it as repetitive, because remember, most people are going to identify under a persona. Very few people that I know of jump between personas just to see what other personas have. So they won't see another persona's information. You can definitely duplicate. In fact, it's great because I don't have to recreate the wheel. So if I have module maps and I have some local, all the buildings that you can get to on campus, and I put that under, that's under every one of our personas. So I don't have to recreate that wheel. I just get to use it in each one of the personas. So it doesn't overlap in that sense. And again, since you're not in more than one persona at a time, and rarely will you switch between personas, it doesn't hurt anything in being in more than one persona. Totally doesn't hurt being in more than one persona. The push notifications, where you get kind of where you want to make sure that I want to send this to students and to grad students, but to no one else. Well, again, because I have multiple personas, it's easier to do that. The fun part is when you want a push notification to go to almost everyone, but then the persona owners tweak their push notifications to read totally differently for their audience. And so we just end up doing multiple push notifications instead of just doing the one to everyone. We'll do one to each persona for that need. So again, personalization is better, especially with push notifications. And as far as overlap, there's not really a problem or issue with overlap. It's just duplication, but it's in separate personas, so it's okay. It's expected. In fact, our core items totally expect to be duplicated in all of the personas, maps being one of those, as an example.
Great, thanks, Marty. The next question coming in is around the spin-up personas that you're using for special events. So how do you force existing users of the app who might already be using the student persona or the alumni persona to start accessing various other special event personas, such as graduation or new student orientation?
That's a great question. I haven't thought of one for just graduation, by the way. I don't know if that was a Freudian slip on your part, Heather, but I like that. I might have to look at that. But so the leadership conference, those are, as an example, that's a group of people that come from our indie clubs to campus for a week to 2 week long event. I'm not sure how long. I know it's at least a week. So in all of the messaging that we do to those people, and I don't do it, of course, the alumni office does it when they send them, hey, don't forget, you're coming to the leadership conference in 2 weeks, and bring this, and let us know if you want this, and what kind of food do you like, or do you have any dietary. When they ask them all those questions, they also tell them, hey, make sure you download the ND mobile app and choose the leadership conference persona. Then we also can, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We can do a push notification to the alumni and say, if you're coming to leadership conference, click here, and we'll put you over in the leadership conference persona. And the same thing can happen with the reunions. You can also, we do this for the on and off campus, and we did it for the graduate student orientation. You can add an icon to the landing page for that persona that's called leadership conference. For our students, while we have the persona that they can actually select, we actually add it to the navigation. So if it's the first time an incoming freshman has ever downloaded the app, it'll ask them, what persona do you want? And it'll be right there, and we put it at the top, welcome weekend. And so they click on that and they're fine. But if maybe they've been following Notre Dame for years, so maybe they've had the app for years already, and now they're happy that they're getting to attend Notre Dame. Well, inside the student persona, we put in as our very first icon, welcome weekend. And if they click on that, it pushes them over to the persona. And then within that persona, we can have another icon that says, back to the general student populace, because I was just visiting and I don't want to actually stay in this persona, and they can move back. And of course, they can use the persona selector at the bottom, but you'd be surprised how many times people go, I don't know how to get out of this persona. like click the little icon that looks like a person silhouette, but it's easier if you just give them an icon or a navigation item to do that with. Did that answer the question?
That was great. Thanks, Marty. Next question coming in is around credentialing and authentication. Do you require students or staff to log into the app in order to see specific personas? And how do you manage that in terms of, looking at your push notifications and whether or not they're going to a certain population? Do users authenticate? And if they don't, what kind of led you to that decision?
So we do not authenticate to get into any persona. You right now can download an ND mobile app and you can go into any persona you choose. We do have very few, I think it's 3. When I say few, I meant exactly few. Very few modules or data sources, right? Modules that you would have to authenticate to get into. So one is to look at their Irish one, their Notre Dame kind of student credit card, student card. So to get into that where they can see things that we treat as confidential, you have to authenticate. If they want to get in to see their grades and things, they have to authenticate to get into our CRM. There was one other one I'm pretty positive that we have them authenticate into. But for the personas, no, it's just by module. And so nothing in our app is locked down or needs to be locked down except for those specific modules, and that's all the authentication we do. We could authenticate into a persona if we had a reason to lock people out of that persona. So an example, I should reverse that, because we did do that a little bit also in reunion and in leadership conference, because there was things like people's phone numbers, and that's not so bad a thing to have, but we don't want just anybody seeing a list of phone numbers for everybody that's on campus or coming to campus. And so we lock down that also. And we could, in those cases, lock down the whole persona, but we would probably be doing that through a passcode, because guess what? Alumni and friends that are coming to campus don't have the same credentials for authentication through our single sign-on anyway. So we did those through a passcode. So yeah, bottom line is we do not use authentication to get into any of the personas. When I took over, we didn't have that. I don't see any reason to add that. It would only be if the majority of things in the persona needed to be locked down, and we don't have that need. And if you're going to do that, then you could use the My Persona concept and functionality of Modal Labs and give them even a more personalized, because you could find out a whole bunch about them if they have to log into that persona. Just for us, it's easier, friendlier, simpler for us to maintain. And like I said, I don't want to have to work with IAM to get all that stuff in, my identity management team to get all that stuff in, but also I don't want to create more steps for them to get into the app. I like it that they could just bring it up at any time and go to town. They don't have to worry about authenticating into it. They don't have to worry about, we like to use a duo authentication process. They don't have to do that just to see 99% of what's in the app.
That's great. Thanks, Marty. I think this next question coming in is along the same lines. As Marty already mentioned, there are a few different strategies that you can take for personalizing information in the app. Some of them require authentication, like My Persona, which would allow you to serve up personalized experiences based on basically any information that you know about a particular user that's stored in your database. So the next question that's coming in is really around how you're tailoring experiences for people who maybe have several different roles on campus. So somebody can be a student, but also might be a parent and a staff member, or somebody who is a staff member and also a faculty member and an alumni and an alum. So how are you really approaching people who have different roles on campus at the same time, and what led you to use personas for personalization in general?
Well, let me answer the last question first. Using personas, what drove me to it was a clear message, and it was actually one I had, and one that when I actually went and talked to people I would meet and say, hey, do you have the ND mobile app? Because I'm out there trying to get people to, get my best return on investment by getting more people using it. And I'd ask them, do you have the Indy Mobile app? And these would be faculty and staff that I knew that I was acquaintances I already had on campus. And I got so many no's. And when I asked why, it was a simple answer. I've gone to it and it's not for me. It's for the students. And I go, but look, it says guest. They go, I'm not a guest. I'm part of the Indy family. I'm here all the time. I work every day. What do you mean guest? I said, well, how about friends? And I already knew I was at I was already at the losing battle because I myself didn't have it for the same reasons. But yeah, that's alumni and friends. That's not just Notre Dame. If it said Notre Dame family, I would have clicked on that. So that was easy. It drove me to doing the personas was to give people a sense of belonging. And through that sense of belonging, we have, I think, a whole lot more people downloading the app. From what we had from day one, there's other reasons why they could have been downloading the app. We added game day as an example. But I like to believe a lot of that is because we gave them a home. We gave them a place to feel like they belong. So on to the other question of what do you do with the multiple roles? And that's been a problem. I want to so badly separate faculty from staff, but we do have a decent amount, and it's probably not enough to still warrant it. Maybe it's only 5% of our staff are also teaching some classes. And even though they're teaching some classes, their real, their major job is being staff, right? They're an adjunct professor for one class or an instructor. And the same thing with students, they're not staff, although they get a student job and help for their costs and all that. So they are technically staff, but they are primarily a student. That's what they're doing here. So right now they just go with their primary. They self-select again. So if there was a reason that they want to see what was going on, and somebody said something like, "Oh yeah, we're working here at whatever location we're working in, and we're students, but look, staff has got this thing going on. We might want to take advantage of that." Well, I didn't see that. They could switch personas if they wanted to. But again, that happens. The anticipation is that happens so infrequently that we're okay. It's going to be fine. And so putting them in, they put themselves in their primary category, they're fine. I do find interesting is that I'll have other people like alumni, and parents don't count because they don't have a home. So parents will go under students, and then they might go under alumni and friends later if they don't see what they want to see. And that's why I want to do a parent persona. So it's something that would give them what they need and what they want. But I've had feedback come in, and it has a student coming from the student persona. And so when I answer them, I say, "So I see you in the student persona. Are you a student? Did you need this?" And they say, "No, I'm a parent, and I'm usually in guest, or I'm usually in something, alumni and friends." So there's kind of overlap there, but it is what it is in that sense. We do a feedback on each one of my personas. We have a feedback form, and we use the footer inside the persona, which persists throughout the persona. So that's really nice. And all I did was in that feedback form, we happen to use a different tool for gathering data feedback. So that tool, we're able to pass in which persona they came from. So besides all the other metadata I get, because we let it be anonymous, where they can tell us if they want to be contacted, they'll give us their email. But in each one of those, I know which persona that feedback came from. So guess what? I automatically pass that feedback to my persona owners who get to answer a lot of those questions, and I'm not answering all the feedback questions. When it's a technical one, like, this isn't working, or this needs to be changed, or, you have a spelling error here, I might handle those. But if it's, when is this event? I don't see this listed. This is missing from the calendar. This is that the persona owner gets to address directly. And that's, again, so nice that we can have those emails go out directly to the owners of the content, and it works better.
Great, thanks so much. final question that we're going to get to today, and it's twofold again, Marty. So first question is, can you talk a little bit about your launch strategy and how you're publicizing the app over time, getting new students to be aware of the app and getting them to download it? And then I'm going to couple that with a quick follow-up question specifically around adoption with personalized personas. Are you seeing an increase in downloads after you're adding more personalized personas?
All righty, last question first again. Yes, definitely. Saw an increase when we added faculty and staff, saw an increase for graduate students. Almost every graduate student went out and downloaded the app that didn't have it. So again, I can't swear that it's because we added the new personas, but we definitely had an increase. As a side note, we had an increase when we market the app in other ways, like game day. So for game day, that was a new module, and I luckily had our people from game day put out advertising. They did flyers, they did little tents that they put out. They told all the people that, for all the guests that come to campus, they called ushers, but even when they're not in the stadium, they do usher work around campus, greeting and helping people know where they need to get to. So they were telling them about the game day through the app. So download the app and you can get the game day. I like using the QR codes for pulling. In fact, I just found online I can do a free QR code that if you click on it, it has both addresses, one for the app if you're on iOS and one to take you to the Google Play Store. So it doesn't matter which device you have, you can use one QR code and download our app. So that's part of what we do for marketing also. Now I'm blending into the first question about strategy and marketing, launch strategy. Launching new personas, definitely send out information through other venues, but also through the app that, hey, look, we're launching this, hopefully soon it'll be a parent persona. And so students will get it and say, whoa, I gotta tell my dad and mom about that one. They can have their own persona now. So I'm hoping that through push notifications for the current users, that'll invite others. If people are in the wrong place, like I'm in guest, but I should be in parents, now, oh, I have a persona, great. I'm gonna move over to the parent persona. And then getting new people is where you need to go out and find your other mail list, find your other people that care enough to give that information to that audience. And again, whoever owns that audience, so whoever owns the parent persona, they're going to want to let all their parents know, hey, great, we have this thing for you on the app. And so I expect to see a definite spike in usage there. Launching all together, you should actually ask Matt Wilmore that. He did this over 3-4 years ago when we actually started with the Indie mobile app. When I took over, we were only launching new personas. I do know that we did a lot of things as far as I still have cards that Matt made and we're remaking new ones that I can hand out. For me, I find that I hand them out a lot during, again, I know I'm going to say it again, football weekends. The Friday before the football weekend, we have guests and visitors that come to campus from everywhere, from alumni to first-time guests and to the opposing teams. And I love handing out these cards that say, hey, you know, instead of that paper map you're unfolding and trying to figure out how to get around campus, you know, if you use the Indie mobile app, which is free, and if you download it, guess what? You don't need to authenticate. And if you download it, you can just go to Maps, put in the building you want to go to, and it'll show you how to actually walk there. It can show you walking directions. Wouldn't that be cool? Isn't that nice? Yeah, use that. And so I've been marketing it in that sense also. But we do a push for our new persona owners for that audience, definitely to that intended audience, and we'll do it through other means to get them online with it. If you have any other questions, I know Heather said we're done, so if you have any other questions, I am happy to answer email. I'm pretty quick at answering email. You can call me, but I'm always out and about, so it's hard to catch me on the phone. But if you email me, I would be happy to share anything and everything with you. I definitely believe in collaborating and learning from other people and sharing. So personas works for us for a means of personalization, but mostly twofold for me. The big part that I want you to get out of this is, one, it gives each person that you're trying to reach, each audience, if you expand it beyond students, it'll give you the opportunity to make them have a place to belong, a sense of belonging, and they'll want to download the app. And the other thing is, if you do multiple personas, you can find people to own those personas and take more responsibility and ownership, and therefore through a multiplication of what you're doing, a force multiplier, you can get a lot more done because you're not the only one. And even if you have a team of 2 people or 3 people, you're not the only ones that are having to maintain, update, and modify and improve the experience. You'll let the people that care about each one of those audiences and have a gigantic stake in it have more responsibility and power.
Great, thanks so much, Marty. And I apologize that we're just a few minutes over time. I wanted to take a quick second to just thank you and give you a big round of applause for your presentation today. I hope everybody on the line learned a great deal about personas and personalization and using this mobile platform to connect with your campus communities. As Marty mentioned, there isn't a lot in the Notre Dame app that's behind a layer of authentication, so you're free to go into the App Store or into Google Play and download the Notre Dame app and play around with it for yourself. I'd encourage everybody to do so. Questions that we didn't get to today, we will follow up on. You'll either hear from a member of the Moto team or you'll hear directly from Marty in the next couple of days. And thanks so much for joining us today. We will be following up with a recording of the presentation so that you can revisit it, share it with your team and colleagues, and we can go from there. So again, thanks so much. This is the end of the webinar, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the day and rest of the week.